Within the lore of Norse mythology, Fenrir, also known as Hrodvitnir, meaning Fame Wolf, and Vanagandr, meaning Monster of the Van River, emerges as a pivotal figure, his story interwoven with threads of prophecy, divine machination, and scholarly inquiry. Born of the union between the trickster god Loki and the enigmatic giantess Angerbotha, Fenrir's existence was marked by ominous portents, his fate entwined with the impending twilight of the gods, Ragnarok. Fenrir's tale begins in this prose narrative that tells the story of Fenrir's birth and binding. Born to the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angerbotha, Fenrir was fated by the Norns to play a terrible role in Ragnarok, as acclaimed by the Vulva. Alongside Fenrir was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, and Hel, the goddess of death. Jormungandr was cast into the Earth Sea by Odin. The All-Father may have done this in hopes the serpent would drown and die, or merely to move him far away from Asgard. Either way, Fenrir's serpent brother would grow to a monstrous size, eventually growing so large he overlapped all across Midgard, biting down onto his own tail. Whilst Hel was cast away to the underworld, Helheim, Fenrir, on the other hand, was kept closer to the gods than his siblings. For a time, he was reared by the Aesir in Asgard. He was fed by the only god who dared approach the monstrous wolf, Tyr, the god of law, honor, justice, and war. But Fenrir grew at an alarming rate, and soon the gods decided that his stay in Asgard had to be temporary. The gods attempted to bind Fenrir with various chains, telling him that these fetters were tests of his strength. Each time, Fenrir broke free, to the gods' applause. Finally, the gods sent a messenger to Svartalfheim, the realm of the dwarves. The dwarves, skilled craftspeople, forged an unbreakable chain named Gleipnir. It was made from the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of mountains, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird, things which don't exist, and against which it's therefore futile to struggle. When the gods presented Fenrir with Gleipnir, the wolf suspected trickery, and refused to be bound with it unless one of the gods would lay his or her hand in his jaws as a pledge of good faith. None of the gods agreed, knowing that this would mean the loss of a hand and the breaking of an oath. At last, the brave and honorable Tyr volunteered to fulfill the wolf's demand, and sure enough, when Fenrir discovered that he was unable to escape from Gleipnir, he chomped off and swallowed Tyr's hand. The fettered beast was then transported to the island of Lyngvi. The chain was tied to a boulder, and a sword in the wolf's gaped jaws, holding it open. As he howled wildly and ceaselessly, a foamy river called Van flowed from his drooling mouth. And there, in that sordid state, he remained until Ragnarok. In the poem of Volsupa, meaning prophecy of the vulva, Odin reanimates a seeress in search of more knowledge, more specifically future events. She reveals to Odin that an old woman in the east forest of Jarnvidr bred the broods of Fenrir. It tells the story of the beginning and end of the world, including the events of Ragnarok. As the twilight of the gods approaches, Fenrir breaks free from his bonds. His lower jaw against the ground and his upper jaw in the sky, he runs throughout the world, devouring everything in his path. This includes the sun and the moon in some versions, plunging the world into darkness. The horn of Heimdall announces the final battle. The giants, including Fenrir, come together for this voyage, with Loki as their captain. The gods, the Aesir, are in council, and all Jotunheim, the world of the giants, is roaring. Odin, the All-Father, goes to fight Fenrir, fulfilling the second sorrow of Frigg, Odin's wife. In this battle, Odin falls to Fenrir. Then comes Vidar, the great son of Odin, to fight Fenrir and avenge his father. He shoves his sword into the mouth of Fenrir all the way to the heart, and thus avenges Odin. This prophecy, as told by the Volva, reveals the dark future of the gods and the world. Despite Odin's efforts to change this fate, his actions only lead him closer to these final outcomes, such as how they treated Fenrir and his siblings. Fearing what this monstrous spawn of Loki would do, the gods attempt to stop it before it even begins. But this merely starts the long and deep resentment against the Aesir, and in turn causes their destruction. Fenrir has been interpreted in many depictions in forms of art and literature throughout his long history, including, but not limited to, medieval manuscripts, runestones, and carvings, Renaissance art, 19th century Romanticism, and modern fantasy art, and has grown to be one of the most popular and renowned figures in Old Norse mythology. As a historical deity, Fenrir has a rich and long history that traces back to early Germanic mythology before the settling of Scandinavia. Over time, he has grown from a simple, monstrous wolf from his Germanic roots to a much more in-depth and complex character in Norse mythology. His significant role in Norse mythology, responsible for the death of Odin and one of the primary bringers of Ragnarok, reflects the evolution of Germanic mythos into its Norse counterpart, with its richly detailed cosmology and complex network of all the gods, giants, and creatures in the poems. Amongst all his appearances in the Eddic poems, several scholarly theories have been proposed regarding his relations with the numerous other canine characters in the mythology, particularly his two sons, Skoll and Hati. Some theories suggest that most, if not all, wolves mentioned in Norse mythology were originally Fenrir, while others maintain that Fenrir, Skoll, and Hati are distinct entities with their own roles. This theory no doubt originates from differing versions that speak about Ragnarok. In some, such as Lokasenna, Skoll and Hati are in constant pursuit of Sol and Mani, the personified gods of the sun and moon. It is said during Ragnarok these two wolves will at last catch up and devour them, bringing darkness to the world and possibly being the cause of Fimbulwinter. However, in the Lay of Vafthrûdnir it speaks of Fenrir at last breaking the chains, of Gleipnir running across the realms with his mouth still gaped open, devouring everything that stands in his way, including the moon and sun. It is theorized by some this was the original version of the story, and the presence of Skoll and Hati came along later down the track, either due to merely being other names for Fenrir or to add complexity to the story. Old Norse mythology, after all, was shared down via oral tradition until centuries after the Christianization of Scandinavia. In addition to Fenrir, Garmr is another significant canine figure in Norse mythology. Often depicted as a wolf or dog, Garmr is associated with both Hel and Ragnarok, and is described as a blood-stained guardian of Hel's Gate, and plays a vital role in the cataclysmic events of the Twilight of the Gods. He is described as being bound in chain within the realm of Hel, eerily similar to that of Fenrir being bound up by Gleipnir. Garmr's possible relation to Fenrir further emphasizes his significance in Norse mythology. It has been suggested that Garmr could be the unnamed dog mentioned in the Baldr's Draumar poem, barking at Odin as he voyages to the underworld. Additionally, Garmr's connection with the god Tyr is particularly noteworthy, as they are destined to face each other in battle during Ragnarok. This is, in fact, one of the most prominent points brought up when it comes to this discussion. If it was Fenrir in Garmr's place, it would be all too poetic for the wolf and Tyr to have one last clash after their long history together. The saga of Fenrir serves as a nexus point where myth, history, and interpretation converge. As we navigate the intricate layers of his tale, from the binding fetters of Gleipnir to the foreboding prophecies of Ragnarok, we are drawn into a realm where gods clash, Jotnarlum, and destiny hangs in the balance. Yet Fenrir's story extends beyond mere mythic narrative, resonating through the annals of art, literature, and scholarly discourse. From medieval manuscripts to modern fantasy realms, Fenrir's shadow stretches across the expanse of human imagination, a testament to the enduring power of myth to captivate and inspire. As we bid farewell to Fenrir, bound yet indomitable, we are reminded that within the echoes of his howls lies not only the promise of cataclysmic doom, but also the inevitable rebirth of the world following its destruction. Fenrir's story, if anything, tells a tale of how, in a time where there is utter chaos and darkness, sometimes those very things are a necessity to bring about a better world and age.